On today's show, we're going to talk sleepers. Everywhere I go, people ask me one thing. I'm in the grocery store, I'm at the kids' flag football game, I'm in the bathroom at a concert. They say to me, Adam, who are your favorite sleepers for this season? And obviously, the term sleeper is difficult to define. For example, Emeka Egbuka and Matthew Golden, they both have ADPs over 110 in season long. But to anyone paying attention, it's insulting to call Egbuka and Golden sleepers, right? So that said, we still have to make a framework for this show, somewhere to cut it off. So the players that we talk about today will all have a consensus ADP on Fantasy Pros of 120 or more. So 10th round or later. Each of us have submitted roughly 5 names for this exercise. We'll go around the horn and discuss and debate them. I will start with my first sleeper for the 2025 NFL season. It is Rashid Shaheed. I think it's difficult to argue against Rashid Shaheed being a good player. 2.6 yards per route run in 2022, his first NFL season, 1.67 in 2023, and then 2.04 before he got hurt last season. Quarterbacks haven't been great. Derek Carr, Spencer Rattler, Andy Dalton mostly. It was a small sample, but last season, Chris Olave and Rashid Shaheed played 6 games together. In those, Olave saw 29 targets. Shaheed saw 41. I don't think that's going to be how it goes this year. I like Olave a lot. I take Olave a lot. There was some injury stuff in that sample also. But my point is that Shaheed doesn't have to be a mere deep threat. He's, even though he's one of the best in the NFL at getting deep, he can earn targets as well. And yeah, I know people are going to say, well, they're going to have league worst quarterback play. But that's why Shaheed's ADP is 157 overall. And I think that quarterback play can be mitigated at least somewhat by Kellen Moore's scheme, Kellen Moore's pace, playing in a dome, getting to face the Bucs, the Falcons, the Panthers 6 times, playing from behind a ton, leading to more volume and garbage time. So yeah, I would say Shaheed is probably my favorite later round sleeper here of the season. Again, ADP down there at 157 overall. Silva, any thoughts on the Olave versus Shaheed discussion? And then you can go ahead to your first sleeper for the season.
I just worry about Rashid Shaheed's game being reliant primarily on the deep ball and running low percentage routes and having a quarterback situation that is going to struggle to complete low percentage routes. I think that Olave will run higher percentage routes this year. I get it though. I mean, Rashid Shaheed has big time playmaking ability. A YouTube commenter on our last show criticized me talking up Marvin Mims, him being really good on punt returns, and that being an indicator that Marvin Mims is good with the ball in his hands. And some YouTube commenter came in and said that, why are you talking about returns? Like he must be really new to the sport or new to football analysis, or maybe he's just new in general. That he doesn't understand the concept of actually being like, look at all these receivers that have turned out to be great receivers that were great on returns. Des Bryant was a sick return man in college. T.Y. Hilton, Odell Beckham, Antonio Brown. Like, being good on returns is a good indicator of future success at the wide receiver position. Marvin Mims has it. He's been the best punt returner in the NFL for the last 2 years. Rashid Shaheed is also a sick returner. So he does have that on his side. I just worry about running a lot of low percentage routes, but at 157, I mean, I totally get it. Obviously, you can't argue against that.
Silva versus the YouTube commenters battle continues, a timeless battle, if you will. Olave's ADP is 75, and I like Olave as a click also there at 75. I think it's reasonable in season long there also.
He's a player I've struggled with in best ball because if the infrastructure were to fail in New Orleans, then we think Olave is the one player who can survive. At the same time, it was the first time in his career Shaheed's route tree expanded, and maybe that's why he legitimately outplayed and outperformed Chris Olave. And in home leagues, which is all we care about in crunch time, these last 3 weeks, we're talking about a player with that kind of upside going that late, which is why I think he's a good pick in that format.
All right. Silva, go ahead with your first sleeper for the 2025 fantasy football season.
Bayshul Tootin, whose ADP right now on Fantasy Pros is 143. I have him at 107 overall. I have Bayshul Tootin as the RB39. His ADP right now is RB51. So the Jaguars, who have an entirely new front office, entirely new coaching staff, they made Bayshul Tootin the second pick on day 3 of the draft, in a draft where it was loaded with running back talent. So running backs actually got pushed down the board this year. I think that Bayshul Tootin would have been maybe a fringe second, third round pick, certainly a third round pick in a normal year. He is a sick athlete. Bayshul Tootin is a sick athlete. So since 1987, relative athletic score, RAS, has tracked over 2,100 running backs since 1987. Bayshul Tootin would be a top 100 running back among those 2,100 since 1987. He ran 4.32 at 5.9, 206. His composite athleticism actually puts him in the same range as Reggie Bush. In 2 years at Virginia Tech, Bayshul Tootin averaged 5.7 yards per carry, caught 50 passes, scored 31 all-purpose touchdowns, and that was on some pretty bad or mediocre Virginia Tech teams. The new Jaguars regime has no stock invested in Travis Etienne or Tank Bigsby, and Bayshul Tootin can be explosive in all phases of offense, in an offense that I think takes a big leap this year. And you saw him in the first preseason game. Bayshul Tootin looked great playing behind Travis Etienne and Tank Bigsby, but because he played so well in that preseason opener, the next day that the Jaguars practiced, Bayshul Tootin was getting first-team reps. So I think that he is in a position where he could get promoted, and I certainly think he has the most upside of any of the Jaguars running backs.
I'd add one more piece to this. I don't think it's crazy to think that one of Bigsby or Etienne could be traded at some point here before the deadline, before the season. I don't know. But if they really like Tootin, there's no reason whatsoever to not see what you can get for Bigsby, especially, and perhaps maybe Etienne as well. So there's, I think, a decent amount of outs there for Tootin. I certainly like that one as well. I have a bunch of him in best ball. Let me check here. Yeah, I'm up to 22% Tootin. And, his price, it's most of this price gap, as all the people were talking about Etienne and Bigsby, Tootin got down to like 150 in best ball. In season long, he's going to be like free unless there's a trade for Tootin. So I certainly like that as a bench stash as well. All right. Daigle, let's go to your first sleeper of the season.
I'll begin with a player that Silva has talked about a lot this offseason, and Christian Kirk. And I do know he's still considered a sleeper because even in our Slack at the moment, a couple of the best ball bros are talking as if we should be drafting rookies in this range instead, when I really think Christian Kirk's upside is a weekly wide receiver 3 or 4 if this offense for Houston pans out under new offensive coordinator Nick Caley. To start, the ghost runner in the slot accounted for a 30% target share during CJ Stroud's rookie year, where Kirk is going to play. And then last season, Stephon Diggs was the wide receiver 18 in points per game before his injury. You have to remember that the Texans also restructured Kirk's deal to give him $14 million immediately. This is a player that's not coming off the field as long as he's healthy and doing well. So I believe Kirk is someone that we can plug in immediately from week 1.
Yeah. And listen, the offensive coordinator could go to exclusive 3 wide receiver sets. We have seen guys from this coaching tree do it before. And if they do, Christian Kirk's going to be on the field. There are a ton in the slot. Also, such a bad offensive line. Just get the ball out quickly to Christian Kirk, I think, is a play that they can make there. Also, we've already gotten Silva's take plenty on Christian Kirk, a player that Silva is clearly very, very high on. Before we get to my second sleeper.
Another good quality receiver with a history of being good in the return game, Christian Kirk.
Yes.
The list goes on and on and on.
Take that, YouTube commenters.
It's like wrestling. You have to repeat the same storyline every 7 years in fantasy football too.
All right. Before I get to my second sleeper, I wanted to note, I know all of you have fantasy drafts coming up, and I know there's a ton of free rankings and hot takes and all kinds of other nonsense out there. I just couldn't imagine going to war without knowing where these rankings and where these people are coming from. I know with us, we have an entire team, a team that frankly has maybe gotten too big, of both ball knowers and data sci nerds looking at everything 24/7, news, injuries, depth chart changes, ADP, positional scarcity. We're looking at all that constantly to make our rankings the strongest and most updated you can find. So if you're serious, check out the draft kit or bundle options on establishtherun.com. That's the draft kit or bundle on establishtherun.com. All right. I'm going to stick in Houston for my second sleeper. It's going to be Woody Marks. Now, this is going to be a deeper one, but there's a few things going on here for me. First, I'm really worried about Joe Mixon. Has not even taken a handoff in practice or a game all offseason. A lot of really scary rumors out there. None of it's confirmed, but a lot of really scary rumors that I tend to buy about the foot injury / ankle injury that Joe Mixon is dealing with. Like, there's some chance that this dude is just in big, big trouble. Behind Joe Mixon, we have Nick Chubb, who I do think they're going to try to run and run hard. But even D'Amico Ryan sounded pessimistic on how effective that could be. And then Dameon Pierce, who fell out of favor in the new scheme, been banged up. Maybe he's a factor. I don't know. But what I do know is that the Texans actually traded up in the draft, gave up real draft capital to select Woody Marks in round 4. And I know he doesn't really profile as a workhorse, but this dude caught 261 passes in 57 college games. That is just outrageous. And so anytime I get like a profile of, well, we don't know if he's a workhorse, but he can catch the heck out of the football, I like that profile at the running back position for fantasy. And again, as I said with Christian Kirk, if you want to get the ball out quick, get that ball out quick to Woody Marks and see what can happen. So for those in deep leagues, for those who are looking for running back help late in their draft, Woody Marks will be borderline free and the kind of sleeper that impresses your league mates. Oh, I don't know. Who's Woody Marks? He just took Woody Marks. I don't even know who that is, which gets me to the full 3.9. So, yeah.
I have been comping him just in terms of where we're drafting him to Jordan Mason last year, because it does seem like the runway is quite clear. You mentioned the catching prowess was what we care about, but even from the time he was a true freshman, he led his program in carries in all 5 seasons in college. And Silva has experience returning kicks.
Oh, baby.
So I like Woody Marks.
Let's go.
To leapfrog Nick Chubb, someone that even if he isn't usable for week 1, you want to have on your bench because the door could open within the first month of the season.
Yeah. Woody Marks' ADP is at 195.5. I mean, he's not even getting drafted in a lot of season-long formats here right now. All right. Silva, go ahead with your second sleeper for the season.
Josh Palmer, ADP of 191 overall. I have him at 122 overall. ADP of wide receiver 73. I have him at wide receiver 54. The Bills this offseason gave Josh Palmer a pretty lucrative deal. 3 years, about $30 million, with $15 to $18 million guaranteed. He was actually the second highest paid free agent wide receiver this offseason, behind only Devontae Adams. Now, it was a very weak year for free agent wide receivers, I must acknowledge. But Josh Palmer was the second highest paid. Khalil Shakir, who was essentially the Bills' number 1 wide receiver last year, suffered a high ankle sprain in training camp and is questionable for week 1. And we talked on the last show about how teams pretty, or maybe it's reporters, loosely use the term high ankle sprain. With Khalil Shakir, this one seems legit. Like, no one's coming out and calling him day to day or anything like that. And that can be a 4 to 6 week injury. So very, very questionable for week 1. That has allowed Josh Allen and Josh Palmer to rack up reps in training camp. Josh Palmer can play. So Khalil Shakir is like an 75-80% slot receiver. Josh Palmer has a lot of history of playing in the slot. He can also play Z receiver. He can play a little bit of X, so he can play all over the formation. I think he's got a real chance to lead a Josh Allen quarterbacked passing game in receiving this year. I do not see him as a big-time game breaker or anything like that, but he does have a 70-plus catch season on his resume. He got that in 2022 with Justin Herbert and the Chargers. And I also think that Josh Allen is capable of elevating players around him. And it just costs very, very little to find out if Josh Palmer can give you wide receiver 3 production with maybe some wide receiver 2 weeks at the cost of a wide receiver 6, wide receiver 7.
Yeah. My concern on Josh Palmer is just, is he good enough, right? He's been in the league for 4 years. He had that one season where he did earn 107 targets, but he's never topped 760 yards in a season. Evan's point that Josh Allen can be a talent elevator is well taken, right? If he can actually turn Josh Palmer into a better player than he is, that would excite me, I guess, a little bit more. But yeah, it hasn't been a great target earner, which concerns me. And like, my thought, I don't have a lot of Josh Palmer just because I think it's going to be super flat, all their target shares, and we'll get to another Bills pass catcher here in a second. It sounds like Silva and Daigle both disagree with me. But yeah, I expect them to be very run heavy around the goal line with James Cook and Josh Allen, and then be flat in the pass game. And that concerns me on both Josh Palmer and the guy that we're about to talk about next. But yeah, I get it. If like Josh Palmer's going to be out there a ton, and Josh Allen's a talent elevator, periods, and is very cheap.
I don't know if I disagree with you that it's flat, but it is similar to Green Bay's target tree, and we're all taking our shots on ambiguous offenses that have a wide open leader for targets. And that's why my sleeper is Keon Coleman, a French player who's now going in the 10th or 11th round. But my argument is that if you were to copy and paste his profile from last year into our Bills team preview, no one would notice because we didn't learn a single thing about Keon Coleman last year, and now he's going 2 rounds later. He still led the team in red zone and end zone targets, even though he missed 4 games, and finished 5th among all rookies in yards per route run, including higher than Marvin Harrison Jr. And so this is just a bet on a second-year player, which we all know we like to target for breakouts from Josh Allen. And that's why I cross my fingers and take that chance.
Yeah. Earlier this offseason, Leone was arguing, if you listen to the Leone Gretsch projection podcast, Leone was arguing that Keon Coleman's year 1 profile was just as strong, if not stronger, than Ricky Pearsall, who everybody is falling all over themselves take.
I mean, Keon Coleman didn't get shot. That being a good athlete, I just woke up. And Keon Coleman, by the way, at Florida State, 6'3", 213, was an electrifying punt returner, which obviously has become extremely relevant to this conversation. He averaged 12 yards per punt return his final season at Florida State. I think we can all agree that being good with the ball in your hands at this point is an asset for an NFL football player.
Absolutely.
Also, Keon Coleman played basketball at Michigan State for Tom Izzo. Can we all agree that being a good athlete is important in athletics?
I mean, what you're saying is bet on the best athletes, and it's hard to disagree. Hard to disagree for sure. Okay, let me get into my third sleeper for this season, and it's kind of a combo here. It's the rookie tight ends, Colston Loveland and Tyler Warren. Colston Loveland's ADP is 121. Tyler Warren's ADP is 112. I think in certain formats like full PPR and also in smaller leagues like 10-teamers, I think elite tight ends like Bowers, McBride, and maybe Kittle are really strong plays, like really strong plays. In bigger leagues or half PPR, 14, 16 team leagues or half PPR, more touchdown heavy formats, I like leaning into maybe a 2 tight end room for season long. And I think the best 2 tight end rooms pair one of these rookies that I'm talking about with a veteran. We've talked about Colston Loveland plenty. You don't spend the 10th overall pick on a dude to play him behind Cole Kmet. I'm worried about the Bears generally. Evan and I have talked a bunch about that. But if the Bears do hit, I think Loveland as the F or move tight end, playing a lot of slot, he's going to be a big part of it. Similar to the way Laporta was a big part of it as a rookie for Ben Johnson. And then on Tyler Warren, the way to raise Anthony Richardson's completion percentage is short, easy passes to Tyler Warren, and if it's Daniel Jones, even better. Just relentlessly get the ball out of his hands to Tyler Warren and maybe Josh Downs if he's healthy, just like Drew Aller did, shout out Penn State, when Warren caught 104 balls at Penn State last year. So when I'm thinking through strategy at tight end, I'm totally fine with elite tight end, especially Bowers, especially McBride would probably be my favorite at current ADPs, but I'm fine with Bowers. I'm fine with Kittle. If I don't get those 2 tight end rooms that include one of the rookies, Loveland or Warren, I think is a really strong way to build a tight end room this year.
And in some formats, For example, my pushback on Bowers is whenever there's a full round or even more between him and McBride and ADP. But in some formats, including in home leagues, there's a real chance these guys that even our rankings have separating their position, Tyler Warren and Colston Loveland, instead fall back to the next group of tight ends, like around Jonnu Smith. And if that's the case, we know we'd rather bet on the talented rookies in those situations, whereas otherwise I deem that tier entirely flat, which is why I always end up with some combination of Tucker Kraft and Dallas Goedert. But I agree. Colston Loveland especially is someone who stands out, given, as you said, he's going to be a 21-year-old rookie in first career, 48% snaps in the slot, 33% inline, 19% out wide, can literally play everywhere.
Oh, yes. All right. Silva, let's go to your third sleeper for the 2025 season.
It's Will Shipley, and it begins by acknowledging that the Eagles really have cleared the deck for Will Shipley in his second season to take over as their clear-cut number 2 back. They let Kenneth Gainwell walk to Pittsburgh. They only brought in A.J. Dillon, who, good guy, we're going to leave it at that, on a minimum deal, A.J. Dillon. Saquon Barkley, the risk that Saquon Barkley presents is that he's at breakdown risk. I mean, he is 28, 29 years old. He's coming off a 482 touch season, including the playoffs. He, had a longer season than anybody in the NFL because he played into the last game. And I didn't think he looked very good in the Super Bowl. I thought he looked broken down in the Super Bowl. Will Shipley ran 4.39 at 5'11", 206 with a nasty 6.8 three-cone time coming out of Clemson, where he caught 69 passes over his final 2 seasons. Now, Will Shipley's fantasy appeal is tied almost entirely to Saquon Barkley getting hurt. But I think that if Saquon Barkley gets hurt, Will Shipley can be a true league winner.
Yeah. And so I'm curious what you think, what happens. Like, I think A.J. Dillon's probably going to make the team. Not definitely, but probably. If Saquon were to go down, what do you think the split would look like between, and I agree with you that A.J. Dillon's not that good of an NFL player, but I'm just not sure it's as clean as it is, let's say, Kenneth Walker goes down and Zach Charbonnet gets 20 touches, or James Conner goes down and Trey Benson gets 20 touches. How clean do you think it'll be for Shipley if Barkley goes down?
I think that the offense would change, and I think that the Eagles would throw the ball more, and I think that would suit Will Shipley's skill set most, and I think that the Eagles can contend that way. I mean, they've got two, I think that we could say Devontae Smith is at least a borderline wide receiver 1 type of talent. They've got, one of the better receiving tight ends in the NFL in Dallas Goedert. They've got that great offensive line where they dodged a bullet with the Landon Dickerson thing. It looks like he could be back very early in the season. I think that they could change their offense a little bit.
And this is a redraft show, but just a quick best ball point. On my Jalen Hurts teams, I try to get Will Shipley because the way that it runs out if Saquon goes down is they throw more, like Evan said. So you get a boost for Jalen Hurts, A.J. Brown, Devontae Smith, Dallas Goedert, those stacks. And then you also tack on Will Shipley later to be a part of that as well, trying to capitalize on the correlation there should Saquon get hurt this year. All right. Daigle, your third sleeper for the 2025 fantasy football season.
Another Silva favorite that I have not had a chance to talk about on this show just yet is Jaden Blue. For fantasy football, we know targets are worth 1.5, carries just a point. And fortunately, that's Blue's calling card out of Texas with an 11% target share in his final season. He only has roughly 200 career carries to date. But remember, for whatever you think about the guys I'm about to name, he still played behind Jonathan Brooks, Roshan Johnson, and Bijan Robinson for his career. He never really had a chance to get those carries behind eventually NFL players. Not only that, but we all expect the Cowboys to be pass happier and rival a league high in pass attempts per game under Brian Schottenheimer. So I do think there's this wide open lane for Jaden Blue to win out, similar to Woody Marks, since it's only Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders blocking him.
Yeah. I think, what you said, does it concern you? And I know those guys are good players. It always concerns me when you're in college and you can't earn it. Now, I know those guys are all NFL players that were ahead of him. He never really got volume. Does that concern you at all on Jaden Blue? And then the other thing that I would say is he's been a little bit banged up. And I hate when these later round rookies get banged up, has that bruised heel right now. So I think it's actually really close for me right now between Blue and Tootin, who we already talked about. But yeah, what do you think about that? And who do you prefer between Tootin and Blue, Daigle?
I think Blue, I should say, has a more direct path than Tootin, unless one of Bigsby or ETN, as you mentioned earlier, is traded. And so that's why I still prefer Blue. Also, my concern more than Blue being injured is that maybe this team, kind of like the Vikings a couple of years ago, are happy with 3.5 yards per carry and a cloud of dust at running back. They don't actually want to have an impactful running game. They just want to help install and move the chains. And so maybe that's why they stick with a Williams or Sanders instead.
Yeah.
I know it's an ambiguous shot here, but it's the kind of guy in redraft where I do think he's going to go really late, and I don't mind grabbing him and then cutting him week 2 or 3.
Exactly. And that's like the ideal kind of redraft pick. I will say that people think that this stuff is like predetermined. Jaden Blue is going to have to earn it. If he goes out there and outplays those guys, he'll play. Same with Tootin. If he goes out there and outplays those guys, he'll play. These guys have to go out there and earn it. I do think that they're going to give Javonte and Miles Sanders at least a chance to earn it. But yeah, I mean, we've talked plenty, Evan, about Jaden Blue's ability to outperform Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders.
That is a good point, though, because in the last 4 or 5 rounds, we should say this more. Everyone's always trying to predict for 17 games. That is not the job of fantasy football. We are trying to open windows here and understand that we're taking long shots, and then we can cut those guys due to the waiver wire the next week.
All right. I'm going to go to my 4th sleeper now, and this is a thin one here. This is for deep leaguers only. I didn't want to get accused of only taking fake sleepers here on my list. So a thin one for deep leaguers is Dante Thornton. I do think that Dante Thornton, Raiders rookie, has a chance to run a route as much as 90% of Geno Smith's dropbacks this season. Like, he's the pure X. Trey Tucker and Jack Besh are battling at Z. Jacoby Myers and Bowers, obviously the horses in slot, inline kind of roles. Now, the reason that this is thin, you say, oh, great, this guy's free and he's going to run 90% of the routes. Great. It's thin because we've seen this sacrificial X role before where teams just want fast dudes to clear out the field, run wind sprints. Their targets per route run are pathetic. But since Thornton is a rookie, we have not seen him in the NFL. I'm not going to sit here and say definitely he's Mac Hollins, And it's also hard to evaluate Dante Thornton's college play because he played in this gimmicky Tennessee system. We don't know how good Dante Thornton really is. But I also know that he's 6'5", 205 and ran in the 4.3s. In deep leagues, I want to find out, I think, if Dante Thornton is a good receiver and what Chip Kelly has in mind for him if he's going to be on the field that much. So if you're
Geno will rip it.
And Geno can throw it, man. Yeah. So I don't know what you guys thought about Dante Thornton coming out. We always talked to Renner about him. It's hard to value, but if he's good and he's going to be on the field a ton and he's free, that's another kind of bet that I could put at the back of my bench in deeper leagues and see how it goes early in the season.
His 25.5 yards per catch wasn't just an FBS high number last year. It was the highest of a receiver in the last decade.
Right.
That has to stand out and mean something. Not only that, but I'm offended for Raiders fans that last year's iteration with Antonio Pierce, Luke Getsy, and Gardner Minshew had the same season win total as this year's team with Pete Carroll, Chip Kelly, and Geno Smith.
Right.
Those are 3 massive upgrades. I have no idea if the Raiders are going to be good, but I do know Geno Smith is probably going to win someone $1 million on Sunday in DFS this year, and they're going to have some really fun games because they have the right combination for shootouts.
It's interesting. I've posted that implied team totals thing a couple times on Twitter, and the biggest pushback that I get from that is, why are the Raiders implied for such few points this season? There is a public perception that the Raiders are going to be better and score more points than the market currently thinks that they will. So yeah, a little bit of discrepancy there between betting market and I think what a lot of people who follow football close think about the Raiders offense this season. All right, let's go to Silva's 4th sleeper for the season.
Yeah, I hope that this guy doesn't come off as a fake sleeper, but it's Trevor Lawrence in his 5th NFL season. But his ADP right now is quarterback 20, and I have him quarterback 10. I think we can all at least acknowledge that Trevor Lawrence's early career development was stunted by Urban Meyer, who was an unserious coach in 2021, and then washed up Doug Peterson for the last 3 years. I mean, just a whole lot of progress was not made. Also, the organization has been fairly dysfunctional. I don't know that we've seen the end of that in Jacksonville, but I do feel very confident that that Liam Cohen is going to bring a lot of energy to this offense, that Travis Hunter is going to bring a lot of energy to this offense, that Brian Thomas can emerge this year as one of the best receivers in the NFL if he isn't there already. Last year, Liam Cohen coached Baker Mayfield to his career best season by far and was the Bucs offensive coordinator for both Mike Evans and Chris Godwin, setting their career highs in yards per route run. And neither of those guys is a spring chicken. I mean, those guys have been around and had a lot of good seasons in the past already, and all of a sudden they were setting career highs in maybe the most valuable wide receiver statistic that we have. Brian Thomas is an alpha wide receiver 1. I think he's a first-round fantasy pick this year. And Travis Hunter is a freak with the ball in his hands, who it already seems like the Jaguars have largely committed to him as their slot receiver and as primarily an offensive player, which I love for the cause of Trevor Lawrence. Liam Cohen also strongly believes in making his quarterback's life easier via higher percentage targets to running backs that move the chains. And I also think that we could see Trevor Lawrence set a career high in rushing, which Baker Mayfield did last year under Liam Cohen. And that would be a really big boost on a weekly basis to get 2.5 more points per game out of Trevor Lawrence on a weekly basis. That would be massive for him.
Yeah. My take on all these quarterbacks in this group for season long is I'd like to have 2 from this group if I'm going to play this group and kind of play matchups. And I don't know that benches are deep enough to necessarily do that depending on your league. But yeah, I think this is a good year. And we talked about this on the quarterback show with Leone and JJ. If you get into this tier, 2 of Dak plus Trevor Lawrence, or Drake May plus Trevor Lawrence, or JJ McCarthy plus Justin Herbert, or those combos, and then play matchups, I think is an interesting way to play it this year. Daigle, it's not normally what I would say, though, at quarterback and season long. Normally, I would say, don't worry about it. You can stream, get 1. But I kind of like this group so much that playing matchups with 2 of them makes sense to me. Any thoughts on quarterback structure for season long, Daigle, with these guys in this Trevor Lawrence pocket?
In a 1 quarterback league, I think I'm still just prone to 1 QB and 1 tight end and not leaving a roster spot for a backup. But I do understand the sentiment, since I'm having a hard time sifting between them all. And you didn't even mention Jordan Love and CJ Stroud, who I like as well. So the back of the quarterback range, all because their ADPs are depressed for recency biased, it's a very good range.
Yeah. And I will say that, I mentioned Justin Fields earlier. Justin Fields goes like 2 or 3 rounds before Trevor Lawrence. So if Trevor Lawrence is a borderline sleeper, then Justin Fields is not a sleeper at all. So I think that one plays. All right, Daigle, go ahead with your number 4.
Let's stick with another running back in Roschon Johnson for the Bears. The last time DeAndre Swift played under head coach Ben Johnson in Detroit, he finished the RB16 in points per game, earned the 7th highest target share at his position that season as well. But remember, and Silva remembers vividly because he called it, Jamal Williams led the NFL with 17 rushing touchdowns that season. And that's exactly how Roschon profiles in a tandem for this team if everything goes well. He's incredible in pass pro, and just last year scored 6 touchdowns on his 8 carries from inside the 5. I've made worse bets. I'm not calling a Silva shot here. I've made worse bets, though, than Roschon leading the league in touchdowns, all because he's this team's version of what we believe Jordan Mason will be. So I think Roschon could be a usable sleeper here for home leagues.
So you're not a Kyle Monangai guy?
I am not, after he got knocked on his ass 7 times in the preseason game trying to pass block.
In pass pro.
Yeah.
And got called out by the running backs coach, Eric Bieniemy.
Yeah, it's interesting because there's all this Monangai hype. There was some Roshan hype for a little bit. Then you got other people saying Roshan stinks, and nobody likes DeAndre Swift either. It's like somebody's got to get the ball, you know? And so I do think that Roshan will have the goal line role at a minimum here for the Bears. And that's going to come back to how many touchdowns you think this team can score. If you think they can score a lot, then I think Roshan's an interesting sleeper. I think that remains to be seen how many touchdowns the Bears can score. All right. Let's go to my fifth and final sleeper for the season. Oh, God. I'm hesitant to even talk about this because I know everybody's sick of this guy. And honestly, I get it. Everybody's tired of talking about Anthony Richardson. It can be hard for people to separate real life from fantasy. Intuitively, bad real life players should be bad fantasy players. And I do think that's true at most positions. But at quarterback, the running is just the great equalizer. And so, yes, Anthony Richardson is bad and will lose starts to Daniel Jones this year. He might lose a lot of starts, but the redraft play with a deepish bench, that's like the format that I want to hold Anthony Richardson in, because when he does play, he's so valuable. He will project for us as a top 8-ish quarterback at worst on a weekly basis anytime he starts. He started 15 games in his NFL career. He's averaged 16.9 points per game in them. That includes games that he's left early, which has been a ton, which is a whole other issue. But last season, he started and finished 10 games, top 20 points in 4 of them. 4 out of the 10 games he finished, he topped 20 points in 4 of them. Mahomes only had 4 20-plus points game in the entire season. So I think if you don't get elite quarterback, Lamar, Josh Allen, Jalen Hurts, then Anthony Richardson is an interesting guy to put on your bench. At worst, he's a trade piece if he can string together some solid games. At best, he runs hot, holds the job, and can start for you weekly. So I think right now, if I had to bet, I would bet on Anthony Richardson starting week 1. It's probably like 55-45 in favor of Anthony Richardson for me right now. That doesn't mean I think Anthony Richardson's going to make 16 starts this year, but in redraft, it doesn't really matter. I can start him when he starts. And so to me, it's the format that's best for Anthony Richardson.
Everyone always asks, is Anthony Richardson now going to be good? Is he going to hold on to the job? I don't know. But what I always respond is last year, he was being drafted in ADP around Malik Neighbors, George Kittle, and Joe Burrow. This year, the players around him are Wan'Dale Robinson, Justice Hill, and Rico Dowdle.
Yeah.
There has to be some kind of median there.
Well, it's just free to put him on your bench. You know, and these are the
Exactly.
kind of plays that in redraft that you want to put on your bench. A lot of these guys, these deeper guys that we're talking about here. All right.
Just anytime we know that he's going to be active and start a game, he's going to be a top 8 weekly fantasy quarterback option.
For sure. All right. Silva, your fifth and final sleeper for the people this season.
Yeah, Darius Slayton is in my top 150, which is like a crazy stance, I guess, because his ADP is 246 overall, and I have him 145. Just no one wants to take this guy. You know, the Giants gave Darius Slayton some money this offseason. They gave him a 3-year, $36 million deal with $22 million guaranteed. He has no competition for the Giants' number 2 receiver job behind Malik Neighbors. Malik Neighbors, by the way, kind of tends to get banged up a lot. And I mean, I don't know that that's, you know, but I mean, we know that he's dealing with this toe injury that may eventually require surgery. But Darius Slayton is locked in as the Giants' number 2 receiver. He's always been a downfield separator. He ran 4.39 coming out of Auburn. He's averaged 15 yards per catch through 6 NFL seasons. It feels like he's been around forever. He's still only 28 years old. He can make plays downfield. And Russell Wilson, even as he has declined as an athlete down the stretch of his career, he was still one of the best deep ball throwers in the NFL last year in Pittsburgh. And Jackson Dart had an 11.1 yard ADOT at Ole Miss last year. That was the highest average depth of target among quarterbacks drafted this year. And Jackson Dart looked pretty damn good in the Giants preseason opener. So you have a little bit of insulation from the quarterback play, just in terms of how they complement Darius Slayton's skill set. You have ultimate job security, and you got a guy who can run and make plays downfield. Darius Slayton is going to end up being like my highest owned wide receiver in best ball. And I also think that he is worth a late round pick in deeper redraft leagues, maybe all redraft leagues. I mean, I have him as a top 150 player.
Yeah, I take Darius Slayton also in best ball, kind of in that De'Ami Brown, Darius Slayton kind of range there. I take some Jalen Noel if I need some more upside in that range. But on Darius Slayton, he has never had a quarterback that throws a good deep ball in his career. And this is like one of the only things that Russell Wilson still does well is throw the deep ball. And I think that's where Darius Slayton excels as well. So yeah, I think it's going to be tough to figure out when to start him in redraft. But I agree with Evan. He's going to have some big games this year. I think Darius Slayton will. All right. Daigle, your fifth and final sleeper before we get to a SuperFlex sleeper.
Kyle Williams for the Patriots finished second among his class in yards per route run against man coverage last year, a stat that I care about because it suggests that if we leave you wide open in the NFL, or one-on-one, I should say, you can make a play on your own. And unlike a lot of rookies we talk about, which is why the sleepers here aren't necessarily blocked by talented individuals we think can hold down the job all season long. I think it's the same for Kyle Williams in this Patriots offense, since Demario Douglas and Stephon Diggs led their team in routes from the slot just last year. Williams ran a career 81% of his routes from out wide. Trey Harris, for example, for the Chargers is another rookie receiver I like, but I'll be the first to admit he's blocked by Quentin Johnson, a former first rounder who developed nicely last year, and Keenan Allen, who just got signed off the streets. But for Kyle Williams, it's really only Kayshon Boutte who's blocking him right now. And so I like to continue to latch on this Patriots offense. We're all in agreement that Drake May is going to break out this year. And I think Kyle Williams can be that guy like Xavier Worthy who emerges in the second half of the season.
What about Mac Hollins, who's also a candidate to play the X there? So I agree with you that they should need to get Kyle Williams on the field. They need playmakers out there. Boutte and Mac Hollins is not necessarily the answer. I'm just worried it's going to get clogged there with only one spot for three guys, Kyle Williams, Mac Hollins, and Boutte.
And Mac Hollins, as I wrote in our deep sleepers on the site, had a career high in points per game in his last stint under Josh McDaniels with the Raiders. But it seems like by all reports, Mac Hollins is still buried on this depth chart and may not even make the roster right now.
Ooh, Mac Hollins. Don't be talking bad about him. He's one of us. You hear him talking about the pussification of America? Mac Hollins gets it.
He did get
a feed is fascinating.
I believe he got $2 million guaranteed, Mac Hollins, and a cap hit of $3.75 million here this year for Mac Hollins. I think before the end of the year, Kyle Williams should win this job. If we're just betting on talent and what the Patriots should do, I agree with you. I've seen coaches use Mac Hollins in ways they shouldn't before as that like sacrificial X type play. So I think there's some risk with Kyle Williams playing time, but I agree with you that by the end of the year, he should be that X receiver there in three wide receiver sets with Pop Douglas and Steph Diggs. All right. Before we get out of here, we know there's a lot of people in super flex leagues. Daigle, any sleepers at the quarterback position in super flex leagues you wanted to mention?
We all know in the last rounds, the jumble of backups, Joe Flacco, Shadur Sanders, Anthony Richardson, Tyler Shuck, they're all going to be drafted. And my favorite among all of them is who Silva mentioned earlier, and Jackson Dart. The Giants are projected with the league's toughest strength of schedule this year, including their first 6 games against top 7 defenses from 2024. Past defenses, I should say. I don't think there's a chance Russell Wilson or Jameis Winston hold down this job for the second half of the year. Plus, the Giants need to evaluate Jackson Dart. And remember, it was a gimmicky offense under Lane Kiffin at Ole Miss, but in 3 seasons at Ole Miss, Dart did average 5.5 rushing points per game. Recall the conjecture last year with Drake May, once he didn't start in week 1, was that this offensive line is terrible. It's going to crater anyone who plays behind it. And then he was so good, he practically made their offensive line obsolete. I think that's what could happen with Jackson Dart because he's a very, very good player. So my favorite among that entire group is Dart.
And he runs, man. You know, he's an athlete and he can give you some points running as well.
Last year, Jackson Dart averaged 38 yards, rushing yards per game. The year before that, he scored 8 rushing TDs.
Yeah.
So, I mean, there's no question that this is a big part of his bag.
Yeah, and to get someone in Superflex who we think is going to start around half the games, it's far from guaranteed. Maybe Russell Wilson surprises us. Maybe the defensive line carries them to some wins, and Russell Wilson gets a little bit longer leash. But guys, Jackson Dart, who we think is going to start roughly half the games, to get him in Superflex at this price is a pretty good deal. I would agree there. All right. That is going to do it for our look at 2025 fantasy football sleepers. Appreciate everyone being here. Ton more shows coming out next week. Be sure you're subscribed here on the YouTube machine. For Daigle, for Silva, for producer Ryan, for producer Luke, I'm Adam. Good luck, everybody.